Hello. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Yeah, I had Streamlabs open. I'm very tired. I had Streamlabs open. Didn't even go into studio view. Just forgot and hit go live, and so yeah, no wait screen this morning. Just jumping right into it. So I'm slightly early, but you haven't missed anything yet. It's all good. Oh yeah, it's Monday. Boy, this is turning out to be to be quite the year. It was quite the summer. The news just never stops. Welcome, everyone. I hope everyone had a good weekend. My weekend was somewhat eventful. Did some family stuff. Got a cool Saturday night stream. Andy going over sort of his his looks at the fighting game, the video game. What is it? Just like a little bit of the history, a little bit of his history in it, which was cool, and going over sort of like how people go into fighting games and what they get out of it. And it was very interesting. 2020 can go away. Yeah. It's not gonna be our best year for sure. My book came out in 2020, so that was good. But otherwise, it's and that's sure been a challenge. But yes, yeah, I got to tune in a little bit yesterday to Rabid Wombat painting, which was really cool. Look forward to doing that some more. It's always nice. But yes, looking forward to getting into another week. I was gonna say hopefully like a mellow normal week, but who knows what that even means these days. So yeah, the news is always just insane. Like you look at, I wake up in the morning, my alarm goes off, grab my phone, check my email, check any messages, and then I'm like, all right. So then I go on Twitter and I check news on Twitter, and it's always like, wow, okay, so that's what I'm going to be hearing about today. Yeah, and everybody, if you're not already, follow Rabid Wombat, who hit affiliate status already, which is awesome. So subscribe. Okay, but what are we here to do today? Don't It's a Trap. Follow Rabid Wombat and subscribe and give him hugs. Rabid Wombat, you have to build hugs into your stream terminology somewhere. We have Ovid's Metamorphoses. And I think it's fairly appropriate to read this in this time, in this 2020, a year of changes and of things happening, for sure. Yeah, Rabid Wombat. You know what? When you start a stream and then you hit affiliate status and all these things open, it would be great if somebody had like a checklist. Like, here are all the things you need to do and remember to do. You got to put an image there. You got to do this here. This is, what even game was this? Oh, the Star Wars trading card game, which I never played. I got a handful of silly cards, but my favorite, as I've talked about before, my favorite background Jedi is Plo Koon, and his version of the ship just was awesome with that white sort of starburst design. So yeah, I love to use playing cards as bookmarks, especially because I don't really play card games because there are no miniatures. I can't play a game with no miniatures, or I rarely do anyway. Okay, where were we? So we are in book 4. Oh, we started reading about Perseus. And like I said, it's a long section about Perseus. He has slain Medusa, and he flew with her, right? He was flying, and the drops of blood fell down and created vipers in Libya. So that's why there are vipers in the cards are the miniatures. I can't play with these. I mean, I guess you could. So he goes flying around. I'm going to skip ahead. All right, we're going to go to book 5 to read The Fighting of Perseus. Because we like fights. You know what? These are all super long stories. Maybe I'll just skip all the way ahead. Oh, okay. Here's this one's cool. All right. So we have. So we're going to skip ahead to a story called Minerva Visits the Muses. Minerva, all this while. Oh, and Minerva is the Roman equivalent of Athena in Greek. So just to keep everybody clear on who we're talking about. Minerva, all this while, had been companion to her brother of that golden shower begotten. But now, veiled in a hollow cloud, she left the little island, passed by Gyaros, but Cynthus, and went over the sea to Thebes, to Helicon, where the Muses lived, and landing on the sacred mountain, spoke to her learned sisters. I have heard of a new fountain, sprung, they tell me, under the hard hoof of the winged horse Medusa used to own. I have come to see it, this miracle, this birth of the horse I witnessed, born from his mother's blood. Urania answered. So again, we're going to hear some of the different muses. And again, just going back one step. So when Medusa's head was cut off, two things popped out. One thing was the Pegasus that was born from Medusa's severed head, and then her son Chrysaor, whose name means golden sword. So Urania, one of the muses, answered, For any cause, O goddess, you are welcome, and the tale is really true. Pegasus did indeed produce our fountain. She led the goddess to the sacred water, and Minerva stood there, admiring long, and looked at woods and grottos and lawns bejeweled with unnumbered flowers, and said that Memory's daughters must be happy in both their name and calling. The mother of the muses is Memory. One of them answered, It is true indeed, Minerva. We have often wished you were one of us, though greater tasks call to your greater merit. We are happy, or would be, were we only safe. So far, it seems, no outrage ever is forbidden. Our maiden souls are frightened. We remember too well the look of that fierce king Perennius. His Thracian soldiery had captured Daulis. He ruled that land, unfairly won, and saw us, once, on our way to the temple on Parnassus. He knew us, and he gave us false obeisance. Daughters of Memory, linger here, be welcome under my roof, take shelter from the rain clouds. And that was true, a heavy rain was falling. The gods have entered humbler homes. His words, or the storm, made us bow our heads, agreeing, and we came in. And presently the rain stopped falling, and the wind became clear from the north, and the dark clouds fled from the brightest sky. We would have gone, but he shut the doors against us, offered us violence. But we put on our wings and fled him. But he followed after, far as he could, to the highest battlement, and further than he could, poised there, and crying, Wherever you go, I follow, and sprang forward, dove headlong to his death, with broken bones and ground dyed red with blood. So this dude is trying to grab onto the muses. They fly away. He's like, I'm coming after you. Jumps off the roof, falls down dead. A whir of wings sounded in air, and a voice of greeting came from the high boughs. Jove's daughter looked aloft to see whence came that sound. So surely speech, some human must have spoken. No, a bird! More birds than one, 9 magpies on the branches, complaining of their fate, the imitators of any kind of sound. She wondered at them, and heard their story from the other goddess. They have not been birds for long. They challenged us and lost when they were women. Their father, Pierus, was a rich lord in Pella, and their mother, Eupe, was a Paeonian. She gave birth 9 times. 9 times she called on great Lucina, and her 9 daughters, swollen, it seems, also with pride of numbers, the stupid things, went swarming all up and down Hymonia and Achaia, challenging us to song. Quit fooling people, they said. Quit fooling silly, ignorant people with your pretense of music. Hear our challenge. We are as many as you are, and our voices, our skill at least as great. If you are beaten, give us Medusa's spring and Agonipe, or if we lose, we will cede you all Amathia from plains to snowline. The nymphs shall be the judges. So essentially, these mortal people have 9 daughters equal to the muses, and they challenge the muses to a singing contest. Not smart. Not smart. If it was shameful to accept their challenge, it would have been more shameful to ignore it. And so the nymphs were sworn by their own rivers, ascending to their benches the living rock. The nymphs are going to be the judges. Whoever it was who first proposed the singing never so much as bothered to draw lots, giving herself first chance. A song of battles she sang, that raged between the gods and giants. The giants got none the worst of it. The gods, as she went warbling on, got none the better. Typhaeus, out of hell, she chanted, scared them out of their wits, and made them run till, weary, they found a refuge in the land of Egypt, sheltered by 7-mouthed Nile. Okay, so this is interesting. So we've got, and again, this story is quite clearly a message. Don't have hubris. Don't challenge the gods, because that's dumb, and they will surely strike you down, and you'll end up the worse for it. So there's a family of 9 daughters. These daughters challenge the muses to a singing contest. Like, we sing just as well as these people. We should be honored. And so what do they choose to sing? They choose to sing about times when the gods were challenged and even beaten, or when they were afraid. So we get a little bit about the fight between the gods and the giants, and now we're getting the story of Typhon or Typhaeus. Same difference. Yes, hubris, as we've seen in video game players. So in this story, the gods are so afraid of Typhaeus that they flee to Egypt. And even there, Typhaeus chased them, and they hid themselves in all sorts of disguises. Jove was ram, and that is why Ammon wears horns in Libya up to this very day. Apollo hid in crow skin, and his sister was a cat. Bacchus a goat, Juno a snow-white heifer, Venus a fish, Mercury a flamingo. That was the gist of it, with voice and harp attuned together, if you could call it tuneful, and our turn came at last. So what does that mean? We've got the Roman gods fleeing to Egypt to get away from Typhaeus, which again, the same thing as Typhon, this gigantic, monstrous creature that comes out of the earth that's sort of the last thing to challenge Zeus and his reign, or Jupiter here. So the gods go to Egypt and they disguise themselves as animals. But specifically, he says, when it talks about how Jupiter, Jove, turns into a ram, and that is why Ammon wears horns in Libya up to this very day. So one of the things that happens very frequently in ancient polytheistic religions is that your culture, your religion has a bunch of gods. You travel, you meet people from other areas who have their own set of gods. And rather than say, okay, so I've got my pantheon, you've got your pantheon, which one's better? Do they fight? All that sort of thing. What was very common is to say, oh, you've got a sky god, right? And he sort of acts like this. Well, that just must be another version of my sky god. So that's really Jupiter, just in another form. So this is basically saying how at least on some level, thinking that the Egyptian gods were sort of foreign, barbarian versions or reflections of the Roman gods. That's why Jupiter is a ram, so then their sky god, the equivalent of Jupiter, has horns, and so on and so forth. Barking Darrow, welcome. Very welcome. Hopefully you had a good weekend and are off to a start of a good new week. So remember, it's the muses talking, and then they say, and our turn came at last. Perhaps, dear goddess, we should postpone the story. You may be busy, have something better to do. No fear, go on, Minerva reassured her, and the muse went on in the soft shadow of the woodland. And I don't know why Ovid breaks up this story there to say that the muse tells Minerva, are you sure I should go on, or do you want me to stop? Maybe you have something better to do? Oh, thank you, Darrow. I mean, look, you can use it. I'm not restricting anyone's emote use. It's all fine. Oh, Rabbit Wombat, don't you dare. One sang for all of us, Calliope, our sister, with the flowing hair arrayed in ivy wreaths. She tried the plaintive chords, running her thumb across the strings, then, sweeping the music soft and low, she sang this song, the praise of Ceres. Ceres was the first to part the clay with plowshare. Ceres first gave men the gift of corn and the good harvest. She gave first laws. We owe all things to Ceres, to her be given the song. Would I were worthy to sing of her, for surely she is worthy of song of him. So we have the god Ceres. Ceres is equal to Demeter, or Demeter, depending on how you pronounce it, the goddess of agriculture, mainly. Also becomes the goddess of seasons when her daughter is taken away to the underworld, and then part of the year Demeter is happy, and then things can grow, and then part of the year Demeter is sad when Persephone is in the underworld, and then we have winter and things don't grow. So again, justifications, scientific explanations for the way the world works. So Calliope, the muse, continues her song. Typhaeus, you remember, had dared storm heaven and fell. And on his body was piled, with all its weight, the mighty island we know as Sicily. To be sure, he struggled, tried to work free, but his right hand was pinioned. Pelorus held it down. His left, Pacinus, and Libaeum crushed his legs, and Aetna sat on his head. Mountains. Supine beneath this mountain, he spouts up ashes, vomits flame. He struggles to push off all earth's weight, to roll the cities, the mountains from his body. Then we have earthquakes and tremors, and the dead land's king, the monarch of the silent, shudders, fearing lest earth gape open and the daylight enter, fearful to trembling ghosts. So some really cool stuff in there, right? Typhaeus, who challenged the gods, was beaten. He is put underneath the earth as punishment, which we saw with a lot of the monsters and things that challenge the gods. So the underworld, literally under the earth. Whether that's all the way down in Tartarus or not, again, it's under earth. And he is underneath Sicily, of all places. And mountains are holding him down, with Mount Etna on his head. And as we all know, Mount Etna is and was a volcano. So that is really the volcano, and the eruptions and the gases and everything else coming out of Etna is really Typhaeus frothing at the mouth and screaming and yelling underneath the earth. And when he shakes and gets really, really mad, those are the earthquakes that shake Sicily and the nearby regions. Dreading such evil, he left the lower realm, the gloomy kingdom, rose in his chariot drawn by the black horses, surveyed the land of Sicily, and found it secure on its foundations, and took comfort. And Venus saw him from the sacred mountain where she was seated with her winged boy, the young god Cupid. With her kiss went orders, take your all-conquering weapons, O my son, my arms, my hands, and source of all my power. And let the speeding arrows find the heart of the god on whom the final lot bestowed the world below the world. You rule the others, even great Jove. You rule the great sea gods and their great monarch. Why should hell alone hold out against us? Let our empire spread. A third of the universe, it seems, denies us. And even in heaven, for our tolerance, we are despised. Minerva and Diana are in revolt against me. Ceres' daughter will remain virgin if we let her have her present affectations. For both our sakes, join the young goddess with her loving uncle. And Cupid, searching through his quiver, found the sharpest shaft of all, and sent it flying from the bow bent at his knee, and the barb struck deep in Pluto's heart. So what's going on here? Oh, and hello, Undead Saints fan. Yes, pesky monsters. Okay. So we've got Typhaeus underneath Sicily going, shaking the world, earthquakes, volcanic stuff happening. And Pluto, who is... Pluto equals Hades. So Pluto down in the underworld is worried that all of this shaking is going to open up the ground and sunlight will go down into the underworld. And that is bad. The ghosts are going to freak out, the souls in the underworld. So he comes up to sort of survey Sicily, make sure everything's okay. So Pluto pops up, he looks around, sunlight bad for ghosts. Yes, important note. So he comes up, looks around, sees everything is fine, but who should spy him but Venus sitting up on her mountain, which is nearby. She sees Pluto walking around, and she thinks, this reminds me. And she thinks back to when Zeus and his brothers took over from their parents, the Titans. Zeus, well, okay, here, I should be specific. Jupiter, Neptune, and Pluto drew lots as to who would be in charge of what part of the world, right? Jupiter got the sky, Neptune got the oceans, and Pluto got the underworld. So what Venus is talking about here is that, okay, so those lots happened, Pluto went to the underworld, but Venus, up until this point, has no sway over Pluto. Pluto does not feel love, he does not have a wife, he's just by himself in the underworld, taking care of the underworld and the souls. And Venus says, you know what? Let's change that. And she calls her son Cupid, who was Eros in Greek. And she says this to Cupid. And she talks about how, basically, they've had their fun causing love and lust and disaster among Jupiter and his people, and even Neptune. And she makes note, though, that even up in heaven, we aren't fully honored because there are these virgin goddesses. There's several goddesses who basically beseeched Jupiter and said, please, we want to remain virgins forever. But that can only really happen if you say it's going to happen. Because again, as we see over and over in these stories, if a god wants someone, whether it's a mortal or an immortal, the god can pretty much go and attack, and oftentimes it's rape. Sometimes it's a little bit more gentle than that, but gods can pretty much do whatever they want. So certain goddesses have beseeched Jupiter and gotten permission to remain virgins forever. And so again, thinking about all of this, Venus's plan is, let's make Pluto fall in love with Ceres' daughter. And again, I sort of gave away this story a minute ago, but that's what we're dealing with here. So, not far from Henna's walls, there is a pool called Pergus, whose deep water hears the swans singing, even more than Caster. A wood surrounds the pool, and the green leaves keep off the sunlight, and the ground is cool, and the ground is moist, with lovely flowers growing, and the season is always spring. And in this grove, Proserpina was playing, gathering flowers, violets or white lilies, and so many the basket would not hold them all. But still she was so eager, the other girls must never beat her at picking blossoms. So in one moment, or almost one, she was seen and loved and taken in Pluto's rush of love. She called her mother, her comrades, but more often for her mother. Where he had torn the garment from her shoulder, the loosened flowers fell, and she, poor darling, in simple innocence, grieved as much for them as for her other loss. Her ravager drove the car fiercely on, shook up the horses, calling each one by name. The reins, dark dyed, sawing the necks and manes. Through the deep lakes, through the Palatian pools that reeked with sulphur, that boiled where earth was cracked. Beyond the city, Corinthian men once built between two harbors, one large, one small, they rode. So again, this is Pluto. He has fallen in love. Wait, yeah, this can't end. He has fallen in love with Ceres' daughter, Proserpina, which is the Roman version. Proserpina equals Persephone. Hello, Hudsonizer. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So he has fallen in love with Proserpina, grabs her, her veil falls off. Yeah. So reading between the lines here. The loosened flowers fell, and she, poor darling, in simple innocence, grieved as much for them as for her other loss. So her other loss there is her virginity. This is describing a rape. Pluto is taking her physically, bodily, sexually, and taking her down into the underworld. But it is noteworthy that she leaves that behind. Ooh, Hudsonizer tearing through those books. Between Cyane and Arethusa lives a bay, its waters held in the land's embrace. And here Cyane, who gave the pool its name, the most famous of all Sicilian nymphs, rose from the ripples that circled at her waist. She knew the goddess, daughter of Ceres, and she cried aloud, "No further shall you go! Ceres shall have no son against her will." Proserpina should have been asked, not taken. If I may compare small acts with great ones, Anapis loved me, and I became his bride. But at least he asked me. He did not force or frighten me into wedlock. She flung her arms widespread, as if her slimness could block that onrush. But the son of Saturn, burning with terrible anger, whipped the horses, whirled with his strong right arm the royal scepter, smote the pool open to its very depths, and the earth opened, and the chariot plunged through the new crater down to hell. Cyane grieved for both violations, girl and fountain, and in her silent spirit kept the wound incurable, and in all tears she melted, dissolving, queen no longer of those waters. Her limbs were seen to soften, and her bones became more flexible, and the nails' hardness was gone. The slenderest parts went first, the hair, the fingers, legs, and feet. It is no great distance from slimness to cool water. Back and shoulders, the breasts, the sides were watery streams, and water went through her veins, not blood, till there was nothing for anyone to hold. So this poor nymph tries to stop Pluto, can't. Her little pool is smashed open, becomes a gateway to hell, and she dissolves into water. And Ceres, meantime, was looking for her daughter in every land, on every sea. Neither Aurora, rising with dew in her hair, nor Lucifer at evening had ever seen her rest. She had 2 torches, kindled in Etna's fires, and went unresting through all the frosty dark. When kindly day had dimmed the stars, from sunset on till daylight, she sought her daughter. Tired from the work and thirsty, for she had not taken even a sip of water, she saw a cottage thatched with straw, and knocked at the low door. In answer, an old woman came, saw the goddess, and when asked for water, gave her a drink, sweetened with barley kernels. And while the goddess drank, a hard-faced youngster, a loutish country boy, stood by and watched her, and mocked her for her greediness. The goddess, angry, forgot her drink, and threw it at him, full in his face, the barley grains and all. And his face was spotted then, and his arms were legs, and he grew a tail and shrank, a harmless creature, like a lizard, only smaller. The old woman wondered and wept, and tried in vain to touch him, but he was gone through a chink in the rocks. His name suits his performance, Stelio, the spot-marked. Some people call him Newt. So again, one of the stories that we hear a lot in ancient tales, we haven't gone over too many of them on this stream, but we hear about gods coming in disguise to visit mortals, or happening upon them. It's, whatever the case may be. So here again, Ceres is looking for her daughter everywhere. She's traveling the earth. She's tired. She's thirsty. She ends up at a cottage with an old woman, and the old woman is kindly, gives her something to drink. But this loutish country boy makes fun of her for gulping down the water. She throws it at him, turns him into a newt. Ha ha! Take that. Is this an origin for witches transforming people into newts, especially precocious children? Possibly. It would take too long to tell what lands the goddess wandered over, what seas she crossed, and in all disappointment. So she came back to Sicily, and searching still came to Cyane. Were the nymph not water, she would have told her everything. She tried to, but had no lips, no mouth, no tongue to speak with. Still she had evidence to give. The girdle Proserpina wore lay floating on the surface where it had fallen when they went down. And Ceres saw it, and only then appeared to fathom her daughter's fate, and beat her breast in sorrow, and tore her hair. Where is she? She does not know. She still does not know, and calls the lands ungrateful, unworthy of her gifts. Above all others, Sicily is to blame, for there she found the evidence of her loss. She cursed the land, breaking the plows that turned the earth, and killing cattle and men in anger, making fields lie sterile, blighting seed and crop. The land had a good name, but you would never know it to see it now. Corn withering in the blade, excessive sun, excessive rain, and stars and winds both evil, and the greedy birds eating the planted seeds, thistle and darnel and crabgrass taking over. So basically now Sicily sucks. I don't know. Then Arethusa, daughter of Alpheus, from the Elian pool she lived in, rose, pushed back the dripping hair that fell across her forehead, saying, O mother of the girl sought over the whole wide world, O mother of fruit and harvest, cease the endless labor. Do not be angry at the loyal earth. It has kept the faith. It is innocent. It opened unwilling at that ravishment. I plead not for a country of my home, a stranger from Pisa and from Elias, alien here, but I love this country more than all the others. Cherish my dwelling here. Be merciful, spare this dear land. Some other time when you are happier I can tell my story, how I came here through such a waste of waters. Now this much only. The solid earth had opened a way for me. I went through deepest darkness, rose here at last, and saw the stars again. But in my voyage underground I saw Proserpina. With these very eyes I saw her. Sorrowful, to be sure, and still half frightened, and still a queen, the greatest of the world of darkness, and an empress, the proud consort of the proud ruler of the world of darkness. Ceres was like a woman turned to stone, and then a woman raving, but her frenzy dwindled at last to anguish, and she drove her chariot to heaven with clouded gaze, with hair all streaming down. She stood before the Lord of heaven, pleading. So again, we see, so this other nymph, Arethusa, tells Ceres what happened to Proserpina. She went down to the underworld. Now, very clearly here, Proserpina being taken by Pluto down to the underworld is a death, right? Going to the underworld equals death. And again, very clearly, Ceres is, upon hearing about the death, is going through stages of mourning, right? First, she is shocked. She is frozen in place. She is like a woman turned to stone. Then she's raving and has frenzy. She's mad, anger. Then she turns to anguish. Then she drives up to heaven and gets in front of Jupiter and starts pleading. So again, like all of these stages of grief we're seeing in this story. And of course, we can all understand and commiserate with that. Yes, Stardust. Penis definitely starts a lot of shit. So pleading to Jove. Jupiter. I have come, great Jove, to speak as suppliant for a daughter, your blood and mine. Her mother holds no favor, it may be, in your sight. Even so, a father should find the daughter dear. However worthless the mother may be, I have sought her long and found her at last, if you can call it finding, to lose more surely. If you call it finding, to know her dwelling place. She has been taken by force. That I shall bear, because I have to. But let him bring her back. Your daughter, surely, even if mine no longer, does not merit a robber for a husband. And again, Ceres here literally says, she has been taken by force. That I shall bear, because I have to. So it's a man's world. If a god wants to take her, he's going to take her. But at least think of her. She's your own daughter. Think of her. Bring her back. And Jove answered, she is our daughter truly, yours and mine, a common bond, a common care. But let us be willing to face the facts. This was not done through wickedness, but love. He will not shame us, this brother of mine, as son-in-law, if only you can be gracious. It is something, surely, to be Jove's brother, even if we granted that he was nothing else, but he is something. Less than me only in the luck of drawing lots for the universe. Still, if you must break up this marriage, let Proserpina come to the upper world again on one condition. She must, in the world below, have eaten nothing, tasted no food, so the fates enacted. So again, we have this famous part of the story that, sure, Persephone, can come back up to the upper world, as long as she didn't eat anything while in the underworld. And Ceres, as he ended, was determined to have her daughter back, but the fates forbade it. She had been hungry, wandering in the gardens, poor, simple child, and plucked from the leaning bough a pomegranate, the crimson fruit, and peeled it, with the inside coating of the pale rind showing, and eating 7 of the seeds, and no one saw this but Ascalaphus, son of Orphne, dark bride of Acheron. He saw, he tattled, so she could not return, and she, in anger, turned him into a bird of evil omen, dashing hell water in his face, to give him a beak, and feathers, and big round eyes, and wings all sulphur-colored, a head enlarged, and talons, and a dull way of moving, so he barely shudders his feathers, sluggish, a bad omen to mortals, the foul screech owl. All right. So the origin of the screech owl is a tattletale in the underworld who has hell water thrown in his face. He deserved it for being such a tattletale. What reason was there to give Achelous' daughters feathers and claws, but let them keep the faces of girls? Was it because they were with her when she gathered those fatal flowers? They were her dear companions, the sirens, skilled in singing, and they sought her through all the lands in vain, and came to the ocean and prayed they might seek her there, be given wings for their quest, and hover over the waters. But the gods were kind, and gave them golden plumage, but let them keep the lovely singing voices, so dear to the ears of men, the human features, the human voice, the dower of song forever. But Jupiter, holding the balance even between the husband and the grieving mother, divides the year in half, so that the goddess may be with both and neither, and her bearing is changed, her sorrow alternates with sunlight, the cloud and shadow vanishing. And Ceres, secure and happy in her daughter's presence, went back to Arethusa for the story of why she fled, how she became a fountain. The waters all fell silent as their goddess rose from the deep of the pool, and used her hands to wring her green hair dry, and told the story of the Elian river's love. So obviously that wraps up the story of Proserpina has to spend half the year in the underworld with Pluto, her husband, and then she gets to spend the rest up in the upper world and in heaven with her mom. So we get the seasons when Ceres is happy and when she is not. Let's see, we can skip the Arethusa story. And... oh, okay, so we got to wrap up the story of the Muses, right? Because we have stories buried within stories, right? So the Muses are telling the story, and then inside the story of the Muses challenge, this is still part of the song that Calliope is singing to be judged by the nymphs. Whew, okay. So let's see, where does that pick up? Okay. And here the song sung by the eldest sister of the Muses came to its end, with all the nymphs agreeing that victory was theirs. They were bad losers, the daughters of Pieris, and I had to tell them. It was not enough, it seems, to challenge us in song. For that alone you should be punished. And we're not. And you try our patience further with insolent protest. We have had enough, more than enough, and now we yield to anger. They mocked her still, and scorned her threatening words. And as they tried to speak and stretch their fingers, thumb to the nose, it might have been, they saw feathers between the fingers, plumage, plumage growing over their arms, and the hard features hardened to beaks. And to the woods, new birds were added. They tried to beat their breasts, but the wings lifted their bodies into the air, and there they hovered, magpies, the chatterboxes of the woodland, still loving, as they always did, the sound of their own voices, the appetite for gabble. Gabble, 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 gabble. So yes, so the challengers of the Muses get turned into chattering, annoying magpies. So now we go on to book 6. And again, we're going to get some more stories of humans challenging the gods. And we'll see how well it goes for them, for humans who challenge the gods in whatever their spheres happen to be. Minerva heard the story, and praised the song, and praised the righteous anger, but was thinking, it is very well this praise, but I myself deserve some praise. I too should show resentment toward those who flout my power. She was thinking about Arachne, a Maeonian girl who, she had heard, was boasting of her talent, calling it better even than Minerva's in spinning and weaving wool. Arachne. You might be able to guess, if you don't know, where this story is going. The girl was no one in birth, nor where she came from. Her father Idmon was a dyer, steeping thirsty wool with crimson. Her mother was dead, a common sort of person, with the same sort of husband, but the daughter was famous for her skill, and it had traveled through all the Lydian towns, though she herself lived in the little village of Hypapa. The nymphs themselves would often watch and wonder, leaving their vineyards or the river waters to see her finished work, or watch her working with such deft gracefulness. It did not matter whether she wound the yarn and balls, or shaped it with skillful fingers, reaching to the distaff for more material, all soft and cloudy, transfigured to long threads, or whether she twisted the spindle with quick thumb or plied the needle. You would know most surely that Minerva taught her, yet she would not admit it, seemed offended at the suggestion of so great a teacher. I challenge her, and if I lose, there's nothing I would refuse to pay. Disguised, Minerva came, an old woman with gray hair, half crippled, hobbling along with a cane to help her footsteps, telling Arachne, Old age, let me tell you, had some things we should never run away from. Experience comes with time. Hear my advice. Confine your reputation as a weaver to human beings, but defer to a goddess. Be humble in her presence. Ask her pardon, you reckless creature, for your arrogance. She will be gracious if only you ask it. But no. Arachne glowered, stared her down, let fall her threads to free her hands for striking, controlled herself a little, but spoke in anger. You silly old fool to come to me. Your trouble is having lived too long. Wow, what a bitch. Your daughters, maybe, or your sons' wives, perhaps, might listen to you. I can look after myself. You are getting nowhere. You cannot change my mind with all that nonsense. As for your wonderful goddess, why? Where is she? Why does she dodge the challenge I have offered? She is here, Minerva answered. She was there, no longer an old woman, but a presence whom the nymphs worshipped and the native women. Arachne was not awed, though she was startled, blushing and paling as the sky at morning shows crimson first, then whitens. Still Arachne maintains defiance, with a stupid passion rushing to doom. Minerva takes the challenge, abandons admonition. The looms are set, the fine warp stretched, the web is bound to the beam. Reeds keep the threads apart, the shuttle threads shrill through the woof, the busy fingers plying. With robes tucked up, they speed the work, their hands, deft at the task, fly back and forth, the labor made less by eagerness. From the dark purple, the threads shade off to lighter pastel colors, like rainbow after storm, 1,000 colors shining and blending, so the eye could never see, never detect the boundary line, and yet the arcs are altogether different. Threads of gold were woven in, and each loom told a story. Yes, so we're getting... Yes, we'll hit all of these topics as we get through the story. And yeah, Phobos. So Phobos is one of the children of, going back to Greek, Phobos is the son of Ares. And yes, Phobos means fear. His children are fear and panic usually. But yeah. So Minerva even comes as an old woman and says, Hey there, young lady. You're great. Not denying your skill, but maybe, talk about how you're the best of humans. Not how you're rivaling the gods. Arachne explodes at that. Where is this goddess? This goddess should show up here. And Minerva says, she is here. And then boom, they get set and they start their challenge. And there's this really cool part here where we hear all of these details about ancient weaving, like what parts of the loom and all of these little things. It's so cool. Lagriar says, so many ancient Greek and Roman poems, literature, and essays were lost during the sack of Constantinople by the Crusaders in 1204. Such a shame. Nowadays, only a handful of works of these bright minds have survived. You are 100% correct. Yeah, it's the scholarship and the history of what we still have and how it comes down to us is epically tragic. And again, we know from records, we know from references that there were, I mean, God, you look at Greek tragedy, of all of these tragedies that were written and performed, we only have a handful written by 3 playwrights, essentially, and then some small fragments here and there. But yeah, I mean, just the knowledge and the works that have been lost to time, crazy. But that's why. But again, though, things are still found every so often, and it's like, well, maybe we'll come. Maybe in Egypt they'll open up another tomb with papyrus that still has writing on it. That a Roman living in Egypt, had some of these things written down. We might find more stuff. Yes, it is crazy. And we talked about this in the last thing we read in the Epic of Gilgamesh, that there was somebody who was cataloging things that had been sitting in the British Museum for hundreds of years, and just randomly came across a tablet that fitted into the Epic of Gilgamesh and added a few lines. And it's like it had been there for God knows how long, just in the storeroom. So yes, hopefully we will continue to find more ancient things. Okay, so again, this is Minerva. Thank you for the follow. Thank you so much. So we're in the story of Minerva telling the Muses about her challenge by a mortal. And in this story now, we're hearing about what the two contenders crafted and depicted in their works. Minerva showed the Hill of Mars in Athens, and that old conflict over the name of the land. There sat the 12 great gods of the high heaven on lofty thrones in majesty, and Jove presiding, royal, above the well-known faces. Excuse me. So this is basically when Athens was... There's a story that when Athens was founded, there was a challenge among the gods as to who would be the patron god, patron deity of the city. And the two challengers were, in this story, were Neptune and Minerva. And there stood Neptune, smiting with his trident the cliff of rock, and the gush of the sea water, proving his title to the rule of the city. To herself Minerva gave the spear, the helmet, the aegis for her breastplate, and the earth under her spear produced the gray-green olive, hung thick with fruit, and the gods looked on in wonder. The work has victory's ultimatum in it, but that her challenger may have full warning what her reward will be for her daring rashness. In the four corners, the goddess weaves 4 pictures, bright in their color, each one saying, "Danger!" So again, there's the story of Athens. If you are not familiar with the story, I don't remember if we talked about it, but essentially, and then going back to the Greeks, that's the origin of the story. We have Poseidon and Athena who say, "I should be the patron of this amazing new city," and everyone says, "Okay, well, what's the best you can do?" So Poseidon comes up, takes his trident, slams it into the ground, and out comes a spring of water, of salty seawater. And everyone's like, "Oh, wow, that's crazy and cool seawater. What are we going to do with that?" And then Athena comes with her spear, stabs the ground, and an olive tree comes out. And if you know anything about the Mediterranean or ancient people, they did a lot with olives. Olives were used for a whole bunch of different things. Olives are great, and so they awarded the patronage of the city to Athena, named the city Athens, and so on and so forth. So that's the centerpiece of... So Minerva is doing her artwork. At the center is this story about how great she is, but then she's going to add a few more details around the corners. So what are going to be in the corners? In miniature design, one corner shows Haemus and Rhodope, cold mountains now, who once, audacious mortals, had assumed the names of gods most high. A second corner portrays the fate of the pygmy queen, whom Juno turned into a crane, made to attack the people she once ruled over. And she showed beside Antigone, who dared compete with Juno, whom Juno made a stork, white-winged and clashing her clacking bill. Much good it did her when she was born in Troy, or that her father was King Laomedon. In the fourth corner, Cinyras tried to embrace the temple steps that once had been his daughter's. He lies on stone, he begins to weep. All this the goddess ended with a border of peaceful olive wreath around it, her very signature. So yeah, so she makes this beautiful image of how she's so great and gets to be the patron of Athens. And then she adds these little details around the corner of humans who challenged the gods and were transformed into horrible things like birds and stone steps and things like that. Arachne also worked in the gods, and their deceitful business with mortal girls. There was Europa, cheated by the bull's guise. You would think him real, the creature real as the waves he breasted. And the girl seems to be looking back to the lands of home, calling her comrades, lifting her feet a little to keep them above the lift and surge of the water. There was Asterie, held by the eagle, and Leda, lying under the wings of the swan. Antiope, pregnant with twins, whose father was a satyr, so she thought, but it was really Jove in disguise again. He took Alcmena in the semblance of Amphitryon. He came to Danae in a shower of gold. He was a flame to Egina, to Mnemosyne, a shepherd, a mottled snake to Dio's daughter. So again, these are all of the dalliances, you might say, of Jove, appearing as animals to a bunch of women to have sex with them, and so on and so on and so on. Neptune, Jove's brother, was another cheater, a bull to one Aeolian girl, a river to another, or a ram, a stallion to Ceres, the fair-haired gentle mother of the grain. The snake-haired mother of the winged horse received him as a winged bird. Melantho took him as a dolphin. To them all, Arachne gave their own features and a proper background. Apollo, too, was there, a country boy at times, or a shepherd, deluding Issei so, at times a hawk, at times a tawny lion. And she worked Bacchus in, whose bunch of grapes deceived Aragone, and there was Saturn as horse to Father Chiron. Flowers and ivy ran around the border as the work was ended. So Arachne really sticks it to the gods, showing, hey, here's your dad, here's your uncle, here are your brothers, out, cheating, deceiving, raping women all over the place. See you, Rabbit Wombat. Thank you for hanging out. Neither Minerva, no, nor even Envy could find a flaw in the work. The fair-haired goddess was angry now, indeed, and tore the web that showed the crimes of the gods, and with her shuttle struck at Arachne's head and kept on striking until the daughter of Idmon could not bear it, noosed her own neck, and hung herself. Minerva at last was moved to pity, and raised her, saying, live, wicked girl, live on, but hang forever. And, just to keep you thoughtful for the future, this punishment shall be enforced for always on all your generations. As she turned, she sprinkled her with hellbane, and her hair fell off, and nose and ears fell off, and head was shrunken, and the body very tiny, nothing but belly, with little fingers clinging along the sides as legs. But from the belly she still kept spinning. The spider has not forgotten the arts she used to practice. Yeah. So, this is how we get, obviously, spiders. And a neat detail about this story that's been in other places, not just here in Ovid, is that they finish the works and they're comparing them. And Arachne's work is perfect. Her work is no less than the goddesses. There's no fault. It's not, challenging the goddess. She actually succeeded, which is crazy. It's just, here Minerva, it's just Minerva's anger that takes her over, and then Minerva strikes her down. And yeah, that's even worse. But again, it just reinforces the idea, the fact, yes, that no matter how good you are, even if you, a mortal, are perfect at something, don't challenge the gods. Don't do it. It doesn't matter. It's not going to go well. Exactly, Fader. She should have thrown the match. Yeah. Yeah, it's a horrific story, but it's a great story. Yeah, so I'll save for next time, because it's kind of a long one, and again, there are more sub stories within it. But next time we're going to go into the story of Niobe, another very tragic tale of a human being boasting, if not challenging, the gods. And then we'll get into Tereus, Procne, and Philomela. Yeah. Good stuff. I did want to say that if anybody is interested, we could, at some point, we could look at any of this in the actual Latin. I don't know if anybody would be yeah, I don't know if anybody would be interested in hearing that. I could go through and read some of this in Latin. Fate here, that's a really good summation. Moral of the story: the gods can turn you into a spider, so don't try to beat them and stuff. Yeah, and again, so many stories of just this awfulness. Let's see, where's the end of this story? Let me see if I can find this. Does this have... Oh, the only problem with this version I'm looking at is it has line numbers, but it's just at the top. It's not actually in the text itself. So around 150. Oh, here it is. So yeah, so that last part. So non tulit infelix laequoque animosa legavit gutura. Pendentem pallas miserata levavit atque ita vive quidem pende tamen improba dixit, lexque eadem poenae ne sis secura futuri dicta tuo generi serisque nepotibus esto, post ea discedens sucis hecatados herbae sparsit, et ex templo tristi medicamine tacte defluxere comae cum quis et naris et aures fitque caput minimum toto quoque corpore parva est in latere exceles digiti procuribus haerent cetera venter habet de quo tamen illa remittit stamen et antiquas excercet aranaia tellas. So that's the last section there in Latin, which is kind of fun to hear. I don't know. I'm sure you'll recognize some words, or, but yeah. Vive quidem pende tamen improba. Live, do not die. Yeah. Fun stuff. When in Rome. All right, so we're off to a start of a new week. What's happening this week? I will have all of my standard streams this week. We'll be back tomorrow to look at toys, which is always a good time. I don't know exactly what we're going to look at, but it'll be good, I promise. Last week was really fun talking about some interesting 90s properties. Yeah, I don't know. I'll figure something out. Something good for tomorrow. Yeah, Latin always does sound cool. So that's Tuesday. Wednesday will be Warhammer Wednesday, and oh my god, Games Workshop dropped dropped a lot of information on this. So again, this coming Saturday, Space Marines and Necrons are getting their codex for 9th edition, and because of the massive amount of changes and upgrades they're getting, they today dropped FAQs, erratas, essentially, for every single faction, upgrading a bunch of stuff, some new rules. There's a lot to talk about. So it'll be very cool to do that as I'm building or painting models. So that will be Wednesday. Thursday, we'll continue on with Ovid. So stay tuned for that. Thursday afternoon will be the return, different day this week, but it will be the return of Dune with Jessica. 5:00 p.m. Pacific time. We will be continuing Children of Dune. We're almost halfway through-ish, thereabouts. We've been off for the last couple weeks, just schedules and stuff, but we will be doing this week, Thursday night. So put it on your calendars. Friday, we'll do Figure Friday. We'll look at some other non-Games Workshop models. And then we'll go into Saturday with Homebuddies stream. I think that's it. If I'm forgetting something, I apologize, and we'll add it in later. Yeah, so busy week. I'm excited. Hopefully all of you are. I'm sure most of you have heard, but our Halloween and horror soaps are out as of this weekend. So you can go and check those out if you're interested. And of course, get my book. or give it to someone else. Oh, look at those. Garfield, Heloise, and Clinton are all names in the book, along with over 1,000 more. And if you have the book, leave a review if you can. That'd be super helpful. Otherwise, have a great rest of your Monday. And hopefully I will see you tomorrow for Toy Tuesday. And that's about it. All right. Have a good day, everybody. See you next time. I had a lot of fun reading Ovid with you. Hopefully you did as well. Hit me up on Twitter if you have any questions, or join the Homebuddies Discord if you're not there already, where we talk about all sorts of stuff. And all right. With that, I say goodbye.